Welcome to What's Your Signal, the podcast exploring how modern enterprises connect people, places, and things. You're joined by me, Taylor Walker, and my co-host, Mauricio Stefan. Hey, Mauricio.
Hi, Taylor. How's it going?
It's going good. So we've talked a lot on our podcast about smart factories and smart manufacturing and smart cities. I think we talk a lot about those just in our jobs in general. And one topic that we haven't delved into much on our podcast, but also, personally, even here in my job, I haven't talked about this too much, is smart farming or agritech.
Is that like using cows for Wi-Fi out in the field?
That's exactly it.
All right.
Yeah. Did you know that brown cows make chocolate milk? That's what my kid told me. But, like many of the industries that we touch on, agriculture is harnessing the power of modern technology to meet all kinds of production demands. And given their often very remote locations and their expansive work areas, cellular is a great connectivity option for them. So a couple of stats that I found about this. By 2027, the market for autonomous equipment used for harvesting is expected to reach about 7.7 billion. So we'll have some self-driving harvesters out there. The global smart crop monitoring market, which is valued at about 2.78 billion in 2022, is expected to reach 7.16 billion by 2028. These numbers are just huge. And the global market for agricultural robots is expected to grow from just under 6 billion in 2022 to more than 30 billion just 10 years later. And when I think of agricultural robots, all I can think about is just like a really advanced scarecrow, just like a little bit scarier looking.
Instead of Scarecrow, it's the Tin Man out in the field.
Yeah.
Yeah, at its core, agriculture is just manufacturing, right? It's just a different spin on it. So, it makes sense that the same trends that we're seeing in smart manufacturing around autonomous vehicles and autonomous manufacturing and being able to remotely track assets throughout a factory would translate into a farm. Yeah, it's usually a much larger scale than a manufacturing, because we're talking about hundreds of thousands of acres of farmland or ranch land, tracking their assets, cattle, other livestock, or why does it take a person to drive a combine, right? Especially when it's following a prescribed track. So it makes sense that agriculture is leveraging the same technologies that smart manufacturing is.
Absolutely. And today, to help us kind of learn more about the use of cellular technology in agriculture, we're chatting with the IT director of Metrolina Greenhouses, Mike Brown, and one of our sales engineers from Ericsson, Paul Wuerslin. Okay. So I want to start with some background on the company. Mike, can you walk us through the Metrolina Greenhouses story?
Sure. So Metrolina Greenhouses was founded in 1972. We're a family-owned company, really one of the largest innovative greenhouses in the world as far as our operations. We have sites in North Carolina, South Carolina. Annually, we ship about 75 million plants. And those are going to a lot of your major big box retailers all along the East Coast. The company started with a 20,000 square foot facility. Now we span 200 acres of greenhouses and nearly 300 acres of outdoor growing space. So it's just been incredible to see the growth over the years. We've got about 800 full-time employees, 400 seasonal workers, and continuing to start new initiatives. Our latest one is a direct-to-consumer initiative where we're shipping plants to all 50 states now. So you can go on to one of the big box retailer sites, you can order a plant through them, and then we blind ship it out to the consumer from there.
Are there specific types of plants that are being sent? Are they like annual flowers? Is it vegetables? Like what kind of plants do you guys send out?
Yeah, they're still working through the logistics of what they can ship as far as, because it's a live good. So you want to make sure that you can get that plant to that consumer in a safe manner, and that when they open the box, they're happy with the result. A number of things that I've seen being shipped are anywhere from poinsettias to we're getting into holiday greens now. We're coming into mum season soon here in the fall. So, you can ship mums to the home consumer as well. So there's a number of things that we're working through as far as making sure that we've got the process from when the product gets loaded on the truck to when it goes out to the consumer, that we have all of those pieces ironed out. But it continues to expand, so it's been fun to watch that.
That's awesome. I've actually talked to you before, Mike. It's been like a couple of years, but even just what you're saying right now it's grown, pun not intended, but even since we've talked, that every time you say that something's grown on this podcast, specifically for your topic, I'm going to be like, good one. So with the work that you guys do, I mean, how did the idea come about to begin automating some of the day-to-day processes that you have?
Yeah, well, it goes back to the original co-founder, Tom. And so his mantra was automate or stagnate. And so they brought in a lot of the principles. The owners are from overseas near Holland. And so they brought in a lot of those principles that were learned overseas over to America. And that was always part of his mantra, was to continue moving forward. So we have a lot of support on the IT side as far as technology and ways that we can look to improve how we're doing things. And so over the years, they've implemented a lot of automation equipment. And so you've got things called water booms. So they'll move up and down and water a row of plants. Well, now we can have those water booms tied to a cradle point, tied to the network, so that people can remotely monitor them through their iPad and remotely control them and that type of thing. A lot of these things had to be, people are pulling dials and cranking wheels and different things like that to manually make these things work. But now with the automation piece, you can be nearby, or you can be in your office and you can be remotely controlling this stuff. So it's been pretty cool to see that.
Has cellular, I'm assuming it hasn't always been part of the equation. I mean, what were you guys using before you had a cellular solution in place?
Yeah. So we had a traditional network. And so when I say traditional, we had what are called IDFs out in various greenhouses and buildings. And we would run fiber from our server rooms out to those locations. And inside of there, you'd have switches, and then you'd have access points providing Wi-Fi in these different locations. That over time became very challenging to manage because we were always expanding our footprint. We were always trying to bring the network where there was no IT equipment. And over time, we found we really needed to gain more of a wider footprint so that we can cover, what we have now and also the future. LTE became the way forward there because you can have everyone out in the field, whether it's a laptop or an iPad or an iPhone, just on the LTE network. And then the cradle point comes into play because it allows us to more rapidly bring this equipment online, bring it to where their devices can connect into the equipment remotely. And we don't have to do a lot of planning and overhead as far as running more fiber and installing more equipment. You install that cradle point on that one device, whether it be what we call a water boom or a table mover. And the time to deployment is so short. You can have something configured and ready within an hour or two, and then that machine is up and operational. Whereas in the past for these projects, whenever we would expand, we'd have to do a lot of planning. So it require, a month or two of design work and planning to try to figure out, how we're going to get the network to that location and how we're going to bring those devices online and all of that. So it's greatly improved our time to deployment using the cradle point.
That's awesome. And Mike, can you tell just, I certainly am not insanely well versed in some of the equipment that you have. So can you describe a little bit more? Like you said, you described the water booms and then like the table mover. What does that do? Like what else is being connected and what do those things do?
Yeah. So a table mover is a device that picks up what we call a large table full of plants. So you might have, 1,000 plants on this table, and it's going to move that to strategic locations in the various greenhouses. In the past, a lot of that was manually controlled, where you had a driver that would, and we still have a lot of them are manually controlled with drivers, but we do have ones now that are autonomous. And so they'll have a cradle point tied to a PLC, which is really just like a network card in that box. The cradle point will be mounted inside of there, and then we'll mount an external antenna to connect it to the cellular network. And so you might have a cradle point on that table mover, and then you have another cradle point nearby on what we call a track panel. And the track panel is communicating with that table mover, and it's all over the network, all through LTE. And they're basically just sending information back to each other to say, like, okay, I need you to go and move this table over to this location, or I need you to go pick up another table from this other location. So it's all autonomous, though, and it all happens over the network. And we used to try to make that work with wireless access points where they were wirelessly communicating with each other, but that did not work well. We have our greenhouses are full of steel and glass and all types of things that are not great for Wi-Fi signal, whereas the LTE has just been more prominent and just a better solution overall, more consistent compared to what we were doing prior.
Absolutely. Are there, can you tell me more about some of the data that's being collected? Like you'd mentioned like monitoring water. Is that literally just monitoring when something needs to be water? Like, what is it telling you?
Yeah, so we're doing a couple of different things there. One is we're tying into our automation system that controls climate control and controls watering. And so a grower will be out in the greenhouse and they'll have their iPad open and they'll have the software in front of them, and they'll be able to see, what's being watered, as far as when it's being watered and how much and all that type of stuff. And it also shows them other metrics about ozonation and different things that we're doing to the water to make sure the plants are getting the right nutrients. So they can remotely close and open panels on the greenhouses. So as far as like on the ceiling, we've got these glass panels that can open and close. And so depending on what type of climate that we want in that greenhouse, they can manipulate that from their iPad. And again, that's all over the LTE network. And these panels, which open and close, those are tied back to what we call an Argus panel, which is our automation panel. And that's running off of a cradle point. And so the whole greenhouse then is LTE based. And that's our goal now, is to any new greenhouses that we get into that we build, we're thinking LTE first. We're no longer trying to be concerned with running cable and installing switches and access points. It's just you install that one cradle point where you need it, and it provides that network connection that's required.
It's hard to go back to the old way of doing things when you've experienced something that's removes a lot of friction.
Yeah, and this is also a lot more resilient as far as uptime. When you run fiber, oftentimes it's all daisy chained together. And so if fiber gets cut in a specific area, you can lose an entire greenhouse or entire section of a greenhouse. Whereas now, you might have a greenhouse with 30 cradle points installed in it. And, if you have an issue with one cradle point, we have our alerting system, which will kick in and tell us, maybe we lost power to that device or something happened with it. So we can go out there and fix it before it's a widespread issue. And, troubleshooting a fiber outage can be very difficult in a greenhouse because you're trying to figure out where the fiber is actually cut and where the issue is. And it can be, it's not always a logical, it's more of the way that they lay out the fiber path. Sometimes it's very much like a zigzag pattern, or it's not straight through. So it's hard to sometimes tell where the trouble spot is.
So how big is your team, Mike? Like when we're talking about the people who are actually having to do the troubleshooting and the installs and...
Yeah. We have a small team. We've got 9 folks on the IT infrastructure team. And then on the IT software development side, there's my counterpart who's the director over that group. We have about 7 folks on that side. And so together, those guys are working on the software, and my guys are working on the infrastructure. So we handle anything that you physically touch and see, as well as security and all of those avenues as well.
So I'd love to hear a little bit about what the impact of Cellular has been on your team, and if you have some insight to your counterparts team as well, how has that impacted the way that you guys do your work?
It's actually made things a lot more fluid. We're very, very well versed on the Cradlepoint NetCloud portal as far as getting in there and managing all of our devices. It's very simple, very straightforward. We set up groups in there which act as like templates. So if we're going to deploy a new Cradlepoint, we can just copy from the same group settings that we already have set up from prior. So it makes it very easy to deploy new devices and configure them. Having that direct CLI access is also helpful. So you can go right into the Cradlepoint. You can be sitting in your office and remote into the device and make changes on it in real time and without having to be hands-on with it. So that's also super helpful as well. So it's really made things more streamlined than we've had in the past as far as managing the devices and troubleshooting for any issues that come up.
Yeah, because I would imagine in the past you'd have to do just the way that you guys are spread out, just the travel alone to fix something or troubleshoot something would be a lot of time.
Yeah, exactly. You're talking about hundreds of acres. They do give us scooters, so we are able to kind of cruise around on those, which is fun. But it's always fun being out there. But it's never fun when you're having to put a fire and you're having to kind of handle something that's potentially causing an outage where people can't ship product or they can't water or something like that's going on. So that's where it's been nice to be able to monitor everything remotely and just tie in to all of our equipment. So the Cradlepoint has allowed us to monitor the device at the PLC level. And when I say that, I mean you can monitor the IP address of that specific device and know whether it's up or down. And so, we can get a text message from our alerting software, or we can get an email telling us if there's anything that we need to take action on. So we've always got first, second, third shifts, and we have on-call guys on our team. Every week someone's on rotation for on-call on the engineering side. And so we're always watching this stuff, but it's nice to be able to actually monitor it in real time down to that individual device, which we didn't prior.
It's going to take me a couple minutes to recover from this image of you guys on scooters.
It's different times of the year. It's really interesting. For people that are plant folks, you go out there and you'll just see football fields of color. So when we do our poinsettias, that's just beautiful. You just see a sea of red out there. And we actually do family photos and stuff during that time of year. People can come out and they have a photographer come out and take a family picture. And right now, this time of year, so we're winding down our busy time in spring here. We're doing our last couple of weeks of some heavy shipping, and then it'll get a little quieter as we get into getting ready for fall season. But if you were here just within the last 3 or 4 weeks and you went out there, you just see fields of color. It's really, really interesting.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
So, Mike, you talk about having individual kind of cradle points in different greenhouses in different areas, right? And so, kind of spikes my security brain a little bit, having all those different WAN sources and entry points. Maybe you could talk a little bit about how you secure all of that to make sure that that it is secure and not, a point of entry for bad actors.
Yeah. So our cradle points, the number one thing is we never enable outside access to our cradle points. There is that option where you can temporarily allow that. So you can allow WAN access to your cradle points. We always ensure that we have that turned off. And then the next thing we do is when we're building access from these cradle points into our network, the one thing we do is we build a VPN tunnel from that cradle point to our firewalls. And then from our firewall, we can then secure that traffic. So we can monitor everything that comes through So a cradle point would need a tunnel into our firewall because the traffic from that device, say we talked about water brooms and table movers, well, those devices need to communicate with servers that we have on our side here in the server room. And so we'll do that securely over that tunnel, and then we can then monitor and review all that traffic. And then our firewalls will tell us if anything suspicious is seen or there's any issues. It'll notify us of that as well. But the Cradle Point NetCloud is also pretty good about just sending us security alerts. Every so often, one of my guys will be trying to log into a device, and they'll be entering like a bad password. And so if they do it after a set number of times, we'll start to get emails from NetCloud saying, is this legit traffic? Is there anything you want to do here? And I'll check with the guys and be like, okay, is someone having some issue here logging into one of these devices? And yeah, that was me. And so we continue to kind of look at that. Paul's been helpful as well with giving us different recommendations as far as configuration-wise, how we should be setting these devices up, and anything that's latest, greatest standards as far as configuration. He gives us details around that. We have two different types of tunnels. We're doing a BTI tunnel, and we also do what's called a GRE tunnel because some of our devices can only send layer 2 traffic. And so, but we're able to make both of those work through the Cradle Points, which has been awesome.
Now, you mentioned doing a lot of remote monitoring and remote control and anything like that. I assume that you guys are just collecting massive amounts of data. Are you guys doing anything to, process and learn from that data and maybe hum a few bars on that?
Yeah, so we haven't done a whole lot with it yet. Right now, we have our automation team, which is actually a different group of folks that work for us here. So they are collecting some of that data in their systems as far as information that the Cradle Point allows them to pull from these devices. And then they're using that to make business decisions. So it can actually tell them about labor. They can decide if they need to allocate more resources to a certain location, or if everything's working well with the automation, then they can say, okay, we don't necessarily have to have a staff member always in that area taking care of this section of plants or activating these devices manually. So it's helping them to make some good educated decisions there. From our end, we're more concerned with just knowing the device is up or down. So we use a product called PRTG, and it monitors every IP address of every device, which is like a PLC, and also the Cradle Points. And it's 24/7, and it'll fire us an alert off. If anything drops or goes down, we'll know right away as soon as it happens. And so in our environment, the biggest thing that'll get us is we'll just have a power issue somewhere. We do have backup generators on the main site, but every so often you still run into power issues with whether it be just something happening to a local panel or a backup UPS failing or something like that. But we're able to be proactive before most folks even notice an issue. We see it and we're able to get out there and fix it before it becomes a wider spread thing.
So, I don't think I would be, I think they'd take away my product management card if I didn't ask you about the magic buzzword AI. Any thoughts about that on the horizon as far as the data that you guys are collecting and the use of that in your guys' area?
So we have some real-time examples. One I'll give you is we have these things called sticky machines, which are AI robots. And it's basically just an arm. And what it does is they dump a bunch of cuttings, which look like spinach leaves, is the best way I can explain them. And they'll go through and they'll automatically pick them and stick them in pots. And that used to be a very manual task, very time consuming. But these robots will just go in there and they know exactly where the stem of that cutting is, and they'll hit it right at the right spot and put it in the pot almost perfect every time. And they continue to learn. So there's cameras in these devices that continue to scan and learn. And the cool part about all of it is we set that up through Cradle Points. So there's a company overseas in Holland, and oftentimes they need to get in there and make changes after hours. And we used to have to allow them outside access through our firewalls. And it was always, never a fan of opening up your firewall and allowing traffic in from the outside. But we had to do that for them, and we had to sort of build a secure DMZ. Well, now we've taken that away, and we've just given them a cradle point for outside access in. So the cradle point is completely off our network. It's self-contained in its own LTE bubble, I'll call it. And they can come in and do changes remotely after hours, because oftentimes, obviously, their time zone is different than ours, and so they'll need to make a change at 3 in the morning or something. Without, because the cradle point is tied into that network that runs these sticky machines, it's pretty much hands off, and we just make sure we support that device for them and gives them access to get in and do what they need. So it's been cool. We've got that. We've got a few other things they're working on. As I mentioned, these table movers, some of them are autonomous, but over time we're kind of building in more intelligence to help them make more informed decisions and whatnot. So it's been pretty cool to see that.
Mike, have you guys been able to quantify some of the ROI of some of these things that you've implemented, like whether it's water saved or cost savings, or have you been able to put those into numbers?
Yeah, my group specifically is not involved with that, but I do know that the other groups that are more involved, the automation team and some of these other groups that are involved with production, they've definitely seen efficiencies. Like I say, when it comes to labor, I'm certain when it comes to water usage and things like that, there's definitely been some improvements there. Overall, just kind of, as we continue to bring more of these devices onto the LTE network and make them available so that we can actually capture that data, as more is learned, more is improved over time.
Absolutely. And Paul, maybe you can weigh in on this, because you also pretty intimately know Metrolina's network. And now that they have these solutions in place and you can kind of see some of the things that are on the horizon, like how else can this be improved, or what might be next, or what are some things that you could maybe see in the future for a company like Metrolina?
Well, they've already started to do it on their own, because they kind of get the use case of, I have this remote device, I need a connection for it, and so how would I traditionally do that versus what I know works now? So whether it's cameras that they've implemented, video cameras, whether it's the work groups, so you have little work groups within the warehouses, like the greenhouses. Mike mentioned the direct fulfillment group. They need a network connection, so they may have a different, instead of the IoT router, now they have an enterprise branch router that, a work group router that provides Wi-Fi and multiple Ethernet connections. To just looking, how do I disperse that? So if I do build a new greenhouse with a little work group, can I give them a cellular enabled device? So they've started to figure out some of those use cases, and then we try to make, we're looking at things now to make it simpler. Do we need tunneling? With tunneling, it creates IP address tables, and I have to know what is connected to what. And so can we use techniques with either flatter networks, or maybe going to the carrier and asking for a private segment of their network, or looking at other technologies on site to help with that control aspect, to simplify the network connectivity. So those are a few things that they've already done on their own, and then we're kind of jointly working through for the possibility of what either Cradlepoint has or what we can do.
Just tailing off of that, yeah, that's definitely the goal over time, is to continue to simplify and make things even easier. And so that's where Paul and team are helping us with some new strategies, for some ideas around ways that we can do that. We have our own LTE towers, so we have what's called small cell service. We basically have our own LTE towers here, and there's an opportunity there where we can potentially utilize those with you folks, with the Cradlepoint access point, to provide coverage to the Cradlepoint. So we're looking into some different options there as far as how to continue to simplify and make things better.
Well, Mike and Paul, thanks for joining us today to share how cellular connectivity has really helped the greenhouses flourish. It's a cool use case because I think a lot of times we get to talk about like cellular in a manufacturing type environment, and we're used to talking about, forklifts and just things that are like in a warehouse building, and so it's kind of cool to see this different type of use case. So I love this.
We also have those too. We've got forklifts.
You're like, we have forklifts.
And on the security cameras, and that's actually been a big piece for us as well.
Oh, nice.
Just trying to cover camera footage, and a lot of these areas are just out in like a remote location. So all we need to do is provide power, and then we hook up our camera to that cradle point, and then we're golden after that.
That's perfect. That's the dream scenario, right? Especially for somebody like you with not a big team, but a lot of space to cover and a lot of stuff to do. Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, before we wrap up, Mike, can you share for our listeners where they can learn more about Metrolina?
Yeah. So you can go to metrolinagreenhouses.com and find us there. We're also on all the social media platforms, Instagram, Facebook, and all that kind of stuff.
Awesome. Well, thank you both for joining us. We appreciate your time.
Thank you very much.
I love talking about plants. This has been nice. It's been a good change from I guess some of the other types of facilities we talk about are more industrial, and the vision in my mind was much more serene as we were going through greenhouse discussions.
Well, it's interesting, right? Is like we've talked, on the podcast, we've talked to several people about industrial connectivity, right? And it's typically in the context of a warehouse. And the funny thing is when we talk to them about the scale of thousands of square feet, right? And we think about that as that's a huge area to cover, and that's hard to cover with Wi-Fi. But they're talking about on the scale of hundreds of acres, right? Which is definitely, exponentially bigger than thousands of square feet. And so trying to cover all of that, Mike talked about covering all of that with fiber and Wi-Fi. Like I couldn't even imagine how many thousands of feet of fiber they had to trench in order to get access to these greenhouses, and then how many Wi-Fi access points they had to try to put up to try and cover these things. And then, he talked about the water booms, right? And my family has done farming. My grandfather and his family all done farming, so I understand the water booms, and those things move, relatively far away, right? They're moving across fields, and you typically have one or two of those depending on the scale of your farm, and so they got to move across all of that acreage. And so trying to just that one single use case, trying to maintain connectivity with those things, like that to me, without something like cellular, would just be unattainable.
Well, and I think like Mike said, when the family started the business and to this day, their catchphrase or their motto really has been like automate or stagnate, which, I mean, if you are a enterprise business owner listening to this, adopt that for yourself because it's so true. And especially in their use cases that they have, if they had stuck with wired or stuck with that option, they wouldn't be growing anymore. Growing still. It's funnier every time. Well, thank you all for tuning in. And if you enjoyed this look into how cellular is transforming industries, please rate and subscribe to What's Your Signal wherever you listen to podcasts.